Hi everyone, this is Phil Trappis, and it is week 12 here at SCF for American History, Part 1. This week we are going to really get into the emergence of the American Civil War, and for the remainder of the class we will be examining the development of the Civil War itself, and then the aftermath of the Civil War, which of course is something that still very much is influencing people in the United States and their thinking, political discussions. We've of course had the recent events over Confederate war memorials. How should we remember the Civil War? What was the ramifications of the Civil War on the United States? These are still questions that the country is very much discussing and engaging and dealing with today. The ramifications of racism, the ramifications of segregation in the United States, of racial inequality as a result of this period, and the aftermath of this period is still very pertinent in the United States today. So we are going to be talking about, for the next 4 weeks, the emergence of the American Civil War, the fighting of the American Civil War, and the ramifications of the Civil War long term on the United States still today. We're reading this week chapter 13 from our Eric Foner book. We're going to be also examining the primary source on the Lincoln-Douglas debates. In addition to this, we are going to have our graded discussion forum, and I also have a recorded lecture for you. My recorded lecture this week is on the situation that is sometimes referred to as Bleeding Kansas. The crisis in Kansas at the outset of, well, a couple of years before the technical beginning of the American Civil War, sometimes called Bleeding Kansas, because it was a dispute over whether or not Kansas would become a free state or a slave state. And it was a dispute that ultimately led to violence. Really, in some respects, the first violence of the American Civil War, again, a few years before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter. So we'll be looking at my lecture this week on Bleeding Kansas. We will be reading Eric Foner's chapter 13, and of course we'll be looking at the Lincoln-Douglas debates briefly, the debates between Stephen Douglas, the Democrat from Illinois, and of course the Republican Abraham Lincoln during some important and critical debates in the late 1850s. The factoid for this week is this. Remember, email me the bonus factoid, just summarize it, and get that bonus point added towards the test score at the end of the term. When these all add up over the course of this length, you'll see that it really does affect your grade. So hopefully everybody's doing this. The factoid for this week is this. The United States during this period, the period in the lead up to the American Civil War, is sometimes referred to as the alcoholic republic, because politics, alcohol, and establishments that sell alcohol were sort of intertwined during this period. Politicians went to taverns, and in taverns they talked to neighbors, and they patted people on the back, and they bought people a beer, and they talked about issues. And so politics was inherently a social sort of endeavor during the antebellum era in the United States. And as a result of that, it tended to often involve spirits. It involved people drinking, people talking to their constituents. And so alcohol was sort of at the centerpiece in certain respects, not always, but oftentimes, in American political and social life during this period. And as a result of this, the President of the United States, in the middle of the 1850s, the President, well, not next to Abraham Lincoln, but after Franklin Pierce was President, James Buchanan was President, and then Lincoln was President. So Franklin Pierce was President in the middle of the 1850s. 1853 to 1857. Franklin Pierce is often referred to as maybe the one American president that you might verifiably say was an alcoholic, though reports suggest he was not drinking alcohol while he was president, Franklin Pierce was a president who was very much a drinker, largely because of the position of alcohol in the American political social landscape at the time. And as a result of that, some historians have labeled Franklin Pierce maybe an alcoholic, the individual who was president from 1853 to 1857, and was a president who, like James Buchanan after him, like Millard Fillmore before him, a series of presidents that have been seen as very much placating the South over the issue of slavery, trying to sort of not take on the issue of slavery and to sort of satisfy and appease an increasingly growing sense of animosity, particularly in the South, over the issue of slavery and whether or not slavery should be allowed to expand or whether it should be isolated. Of course, Abraham Lincoln's position on slavery was that slavery should be isolated. Abraham Lincoln did not ever testify that he would seek to ban slavery in the South, but Abraham Lincoln simply promoted the idea that slavery should not be allowed to expand. The presidents before Abraham Lincoln, James Buchanan, who is sometimes regarded as the most disastrous American president, Franklin Pierce, and then Millard Fillmore, those three presidents have often been criticized for placating the South, for not taking on the issue, for trying to appease the growing animosities in the South over the desire to protect and expand slavery in the United States. So the factoid, Franklin Pierce, perhaps one of the only presidents of the United States that one might say may have been an alcoholic, a product largely of the political system of the day. All right, everyone, let's have a great week. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will get your papers graded soon. And let's have a great week. I'll see you in the discussion forum.